I had a client provide me with this design the other day, and he couldn't quite figure out how to get this dove over here on the right to work on this larger stone over here on the left without the circle around it. So first what I'm going to do is we'll take a look at what he did and see if we can fix that, and then I'm going to just start over from the beginning and go through the steps that I would do in order to get this to work. So the first thing that I'll do is zoom in to his, and I will hit V on the keyboard so that we can see the wireframe, so that you can see what's going on here. We've got overlapping pieces, which usually means that each of these individual pieces was not combined with any others. And so when it got outlined, they all got outlined individually. So we can go ahead and work with this. What you would want to do is you would take this particular piece here, hold down Shift and click on the other one, and then just hit W to weld those together, and that would then weld it there. We can do the same thing for this one. We'll grab this, and you can do it multiple at the same time. So if I grabbed that, held Shift and selected this one, and held Shift and selected this one, you let go of Shift before you hit W, and that will then weld all those together as well. So one thing that you'll notice is this line width here is not consistent with this line width here. So if I hit undo, you'll see why, and that is because this one overlaps right there, and same thing with this one, how it's overlapping. So there's a couple things we can do if we wanted to keep our line widths the same. Is we could take this particular piece here, Shift select this one, and then come up and do what's called a trim. And what that does is it uses this first selected item as a reference for trimming the second selected item. So we can do the same thing. We've got it selected here, Shift select our target, and then trim that, and it will then trim that line. What that does is that when we now grab these three outlines and weld those together, hitting W, now our line thickness is going to stay the same. This little piece here you may or may not want to keep. I'll show you two different ways of grabbing it to get rid of it. You can come over to the shape tool, grab your shape tool, and then just select all of those and hit delete. Or I'm going to undo with Control Z, and I'll show you a different way. You can grab the virtual segment delete tool. Since it's not intersecting with anything, if you just click on it, it's going to delete that whole path. So virtual segment delete is probably the faster way of going for that particular one. Now we need to come over here to where this has gone out kind of crazy, and if we zoom in to this, you'll see why that's happening, and that's because we've got this little jutted out area there. So had we fixed that to begin with and removed that, it probably would not have happened. So we can just double click on this node to delete that, and then we can click on the handle and click on the node, then click on this handle and bend it back around the way that we want it to go. Same thing for this. I usually will just double click on this one that's way out in the middle of nowhere. That gets rid of it. And then this one, if it's a line, which it is, I'll convert it to a curve, and then that way I can bend this. And I'll usually bring this node up here a little bit and bend this node is not necessary, this node is not necessary, this node is not necessary. So I'll actually double click on all these unnecessary nodes because you really don't need them, and the more nodes you have, the slower it takes to cut. Not that it's a big deal, but it does take a little bit more time to cut. If you think of those nodes as kind of yield signs on a road, as your cutter's going along this road, every time it gets to one of those, it kind of has to stop for a second and look for traffic. It's just thinking, which way it needs to go next and that sort of stuff. We can get rid of a lot of those nodes if we, with the shape tool selected, hit Control A to select all nodes, and then you can either come up here and hit Reduce Nodes. This down here tells you how many you have, 69 right now. If we hit Reduce Nodes, it only got rid of 60 of them, which isn't very many. So I usually like to do a smooth of about 10 and then hit Enter, and that'll get rid of some more. So now we're down to 39 nodes instead of the 69, which is a little bit better. But then after you smooth them, it causes your nodes to become smooth, so I would then come back and cusp them all, and I will usually also convert them all to curves, just so that when I come back in here to work with my lines, it's easier for me to do so with cusped nodes. And so I'll just delete any of these nodes that I really don't need, just to clean this up a little bit. And same thing for the inside. I'll select all with Control A, reduce that down to 10, cusp all my nodes, and I just like to clean up the designs, even if they were done by somebody else, or even done by myself. A lot of times I'll go back and see something and think it ought to be changed just a little bit, made a little bit better. So I think it's always good to go through and kind of audit your designs and make them better. Okay, so now we've successfully, I'll do this one more here. Get rid of that there and then curve that back around. And I'm just zooming in and out using my zoom wheel. So that's how I'm zooming in and out most of the time. If I want to zoom to everything, I'll usually select a piece and hit Shift F2. That will zoom to my selected. If I want to zoom to everything, I hit F4 on the keyboard and that zooms out to everything. Okay, so if I hit V again to get out of wireframe, we'll see that we've got this mostly completed, except all of these inside pieces are still individual pieces, so we need to combine them all together. The easiest way of doing that is grab everything and just hit the Fill Grayscale button. What that does is it combines all of the inside pieces together, fills them in 10% gray, then gives you your outline just as black. And I just hit Control Z to undo that after I moved it out of the way. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do is we want to check the line width for our V-line, because we made this larger than it was before, or he had made it larger. So if I click on the edge with my freehand tool and then click down here, perpendicular, that's going to say that my line thickness is actually 0.139 inches. I like to keep mine at 0.09, but then again I also like to keep the small lines pretty close to 0.09, and you can see that the line thicknesses are different in these wings. So it might be that I want to make this part here my 0.09. So I'll go ahead and measure that real quick, and that's 0.11 inches. So what we'll do is we'll grab the frosted part, hold Shift, select the black part, let go of Shift, and then combine those together. And I know I just created a reference line in here somewhere, but I can't really see it, so I'll hit V on my keyboard so that I can see it again. So I can grab that, Shift select right here now, and then I'll run Blastable on that. And what that will do is it will find the difference between the 0.11 and 0.09 and then do a contour to the inside to make sure that that's how we want it to be. So our outside line is still going to be thicker than 0.09. It's 0.12, but our inside line here is 0.09. So I didn't want to go too thin with these. The other option is to manually change these to thicken them up so that it can all be consistent. And you can do that as well by coming in and editing these lines. Something more like this. When you do the Blastable tool, it uses contour in order to do that, and the contour tool will often add in more nodes that I like. So once again, I would select all. So we've got 277 now, and I would smooth that back down about 10, and once again cusp and turn them to curves. That way, as I edit it, it's just a lot easier than using smooth nodes that kind of work in both directions there. So that's how I'd go about fixing that one. But let's zoom out here and we'll start with this one to begin with. So typically what I would do is I would take what I want and drag it over here, and while I'm dragging I'll right click, which gives me a copy. So I've still got my finger down on my left click, and now I'll let go of my left click. I'll click on that piece that I want to get rid of and delete it, and all these inside pieces I will combine them together. Combining them together makes them one curve. They all have to have the same fill, same outline, same everything there, but that's okay. So the next thing that I would do is come in and measure one of these lines, either one of these. I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and go with this inside line here. So it is 0.089 inches, so that's good. If I just take this and run my frosted outline button on it, it will go ahead and outline that for me at 0.09 inches. And that's going to be pretty consistent with the rest of with my lines there. Actually, I'm going to back up. I'll undo that a couple times. Sorry, frosted outline takes more than one undo, so I'll have to work on fixing that. But since we know that this one here has a problem, I'll go ahead and fix that first, and we can take this node like we did before and just delete it. You can see kind of there how it's changed that curve a little bit, but it's keeping my preview from what it was before, so that way I can recurve it. And if you don't have these outline previews on, you come up to Tools, Options, and under Display, it's Highlight Outline for selected objects, and that will give you that little dotted outline there for anything that's selected. So if you don't have those, that's how you'd get them. Okay. So that should take care of that problem, so we'll go ahead and just hit Frosted Outline again. Oops, I must have done that to the wrong, I did that to the wrong object. Select this, and then hit Frosted Outline. And that then gets us the bird that we want. And from there, and we can also see that that ended up getting outlined as opposed to the original where it isn't outlined, so we'll fix that here as well. On this one, all we'd have to do is take our virtual segment delete and just click on this, and it will get rid of that and leave just the inside one. Okay, so I'm going to measure this one and see how big it is. Overall it's 9.41 inches, so I'll grab this one and do the same. I'll lock my ratio so that as I move this one to 9.1, it's going to be about the same size. And I will combine it together so that I can now change my line widths back down to 0.09. So I'll click on this, click on this. Instead of 0.105, I want to shift select it and hit the frosted out or blastable again. And that will then bring it back down to 0.09 inches. So the only one that's not really 0.09 is this line here. If I wanted to fix that, I could. What I would do is break these things all apart, grab just this inside one. I'm going to clean it up a little bit from our from what we had done before, and there's actually a smooth tool here that I'll use right here to smooth that out a little bit. Smooth actually works pretty nicely on a lot of stuff, so if I came in here and smoothed these lines a little bit, it just makes them a little bit nicer. You just kind of click and drag on it to smooth things out. Right here, same thing, I can just kind of click and drag on it, smooth those out. So what we'll do is we'll grab this one here, and I will run the frosted outline on it by itself, and we'll hit V so that we can actually see what's going on. So this line here is that outline that we just created. Okay, so then what we can do is we can take this top wing here, and an easy way is to just bring these nodes down so that they're overlapping. And we did this before where we trimmed, right? So if we just take all these nodes and bring them down just a little bit, just to make sure that they're overlapping with that other piece, then we can take this one, shift select the one we want to switch or change, and hit trim, and that would go back and trim that back down. But it's trimming it with this as our reference, which makes it so that it's going to be even at that 0.09 inches. So now that we've done that, we can get rid of our reference line. We don't need it anymore. We'll hit V to get back out, and then we'll just grab everything again and hit F to run our fill grayscale. So now we've got our dove with 0.09 thick outlines for the entire thing. Other than maybe this, we could clean that up a little bit more. But you can see how that differs from the one above, and that was because those line thicknesses were different, and I didn't want those wings to be too small. So two different ways of going about doing things, but hopefully that helps in showing how you can take one design and make it a little bit bigger or change it a little bit in order to get it to work. The reason, if I grab this dove and bring it back over, I think the reason that what happened before with what he did was that he probably ran, I don't know that it was frosted outline, maybe he ran panels, which would do the same thing. So applying panels to that will apply the panel to each individual thing that's selected, since they're not combined. So I'm assuming that's what happened before, is that he did that. So panels and frosted outline actually work very similarly, other than frosted outline's really meant to always stay that your default number. So if you hold control and click on it, you'll see it's 0.09 inches, where the panels actually gives you that option to switch it on the fly here a little bit easier. But either way, I guess I should undo and get it back to the way it was. So I'll go ahead and save this now. Do save, and we'll call it good.